Welcome to ScheduleMaker, a tool that creates graphical schedule formats for you. You simply enter your tasks with a few dates, and the tool creates the schedule. 3 schedules are created, a calendar-style view and 2 Gantt-style views. Any of the schedule formats can be shared with others by doing a copy-paste into other applications. This tool is great for business schedules such as proposals, projects and programs, creating an integrated master schedule, also known as an IMS, contract line item number summaries or CLIN summaries, program summary master schedules, and much more. The tool is also good for home use such as personal projects or family calendars and events. This is an overview of the ScheduleMaker tool, and we're going to start out with the instructions. But first I'd like to show you that there are multiple tabs across the bottom here, and this is an Excel-based tool. So there's an instructions tab, user notes, where you can enter your own information, a setup tab, which is critical for startup and end dates and display dates, the main schedule, where you're going to add your information for each task, and then there's 3 reports plus an example tab. So we'll start out with the instructions tab. When you first enter the instructions tab, you'll be presented with a window that asks you to agree by the instructions and the end user license agreement. Select yes. If you don't agree with that, you can select no. So we'll select yes. And then there's some basic information about the tool, what it does, copyright. And here's the crux of the information, table of contents, and you can see the different areas of information that's provided, and these are highlighted as you go down. I recommend that you certainly look at these various steps and so forth. Now, this isn't a macro VBA based Excel, so you will want to, as indicated up at the top here, and make sure your tool is enabled for macro use. Let's see, here's the macro, must be macro. Okay, here it is. So you want to make sure that your macros on this tool are enabled, and there's instructions provided. The next tab is the user notes. It's free entry. You can enter any information you like. The next tab is the setup tab, and we're going to enlarge this in as we go through this so you can see this, but we're in full view mode. It's kind of a bird's eye view. There's multiple sections here. There's some startup dates, your duration or end date, if you want to move dates off of holidays and weekends, and then finally there's a selection for how much information you want to display on the screen. And then there's the ancillary project description that you can enter that in. This tool will display up to 2 years worth of activities, but you could have up to 10, 15, 20 years of activities. There's just a limitation of what the display will show. Any 2-year period within your range can be displayed. Then the main schedule. There's multiple areas. The area at the top here is sort of like your dashboard, which is a copy from the setup tab, an additional area for notes. And then this is the main entry area where you're going to enter in your information for each task as you go through and creating your proposal, project, home effort, or family calendar, whatever it may be. And we're going to get more into that. To the right of this, as you can see, these notes are saying don't edit any of these areas. Just like these columns say no edit, there's formulas in here, don't edit those. This area actually just gives you a preview of what you're about to see in the reports. So we're going to go on to the report area. I'm going to switch over to, at the bottom here, report 1, schedule Gantt view. And you'll notice there's 2 Gantt views, which are sandwiched. There's a calendar view sandwiched between them. The Gantt view on the left provides a more detailed view of information. The Gantt view on the right is a quick view. Either one you can copy, and the middle one is the classical calendar view, and we'll get to that, and of course the examples on the right. So we're going to look at the report view, and if anything is changed in the main schedule or the setup, it's going to ask you, do you want to update this? So right now we're going to say no, and we'll show later what when you say yes does. This displays again basically the dashboard view, all of the tasks that you've entered, and some other information that applies. And then here's the actual Gantt view of months, days, and dates for your schedule. And each item on your list or task is displayed in a bar-like view. So the colors on each bar indicate the duration, and then there's a label on top of that. The yellow marker with the red lines indicates the today date. Moving on to the classical calendar, this is a typical calendar, and the calendar goes on for a 2-year period, and you get to choose when the calendar starts. So every task that you entered in the main schedule will show up in the appropriate date, regardless of what year and month. It will display whatever you selected have entered. And then finally there is the report 3 schedule, which uses the Excel classical view of what a Gantt might look like. You have your tasks listed at the left, the dates across the top, and your bars indicating the duration of period and what the task is. And there's a lot of other options that you can change, and we'll get into those later. And then the examples at the end. These are typical. These are screenshots of what you can produce. You can scroll down and view as needed, and we can zoom in on those later. Actually, I can show you one right now. We'll just zoom in on this. So this one shows your task, and we can scroll to the right, and it'll show the actual task with the bars. I'm going to scroll down. Here's the calendar, which happens to start in May, and these are just sample entries for what could be in your project or program or home calendar. And there's it indicates at the top multiple views here, and you can scroll through these on your own. And then you can always add your a CLIN summary schedule, which is important to many people in a lot of companies, and then personal calendars and so forth. So that is the basic overlay of the tool. The instructions tab, there's the user notes, and the setup tab, main schedule, and 3 of the examples here. When you first enter the instructions tab, which is at the lower left, you can click on the tab and you'll be presented with a user notification. And I'll zoom in on this a little bit. And let's see. Okay, it's not going to let zoom in this mode, but it basically asks you if you agree to the user license agreement and abide by the instructions. So you want to say yes. If you say no, you'll be presented with a screen that says please discontinue use, but we're going to say yes. And this is the instruction tab. All of the tabs have a similar layout, where the very top left is the name of the tab. So you've selected the tab, and the top left in cell A1 is replicates the name. There's some information across the top agreeing by the rules, a little bit of a description, copyright, and eventually you'll see this note in red. This isn't a Microsoft Excel tool where you must have macros enabled. Further below, there's instructions for this, and you may end up receiving additional instructions which are more detailed. But the instructions here, if you follow them, they should get you to enabling macros. It's all point and click, 5 or 6 steps, and you're done. The table of contents for the instructions has recommendations, and you can read through this, and I can enlarge that a little bit. Recommendations, it's a simple 3-step process, some do's and don'ts, and some advanced user information at the end. And you can scroll down and read through all this. It basically describes what to do in each of the tabs. It's very simple. Enter your data and view the information. There is a section on do's and don'ts. Please follow these. The do's are pretty evident once you read it. The don'ts describe things. Please do not do these. The reason for this section is this is an open source tool at this point, where you can see the various formulas and equations, and there's some areas that you should not edit, and don't edit those areas, and don't change tab names and insert rows or columns where they shouldn't be, and you can read through those. Some good configuration management, naming your files, and the agreement further below. The user note tab, which you simply select using the mouse at the lower left, will present basically a blank screen where you as the user can enter any information you want. It's all open, except for you can't change the couple cells up here, but you can still see the formulas, and you can enter in notes. If you want to pre-think out what your sequencing is for tasking or create your own view, this is an open area for the user. Moving on to the Setup tab, there are several areas that you want to make sure that you look at and update. There is the start dates, which is on the upper left, and we're going to enlarge these so you can see every one of these, and we'll go through these in detail. There are the end dates, which you will update over here on the middle section. And then towards the right, there is an area where you can select to move the entire project end date off of a weekend or a federal holiday to a previous day. So all of these dates relate to your project, and then below here there's the date selection range for displaying on the calendar. You will select this to say what I want to see on each of the schedules, when the start date may be, and when the end date may be. Recall that there is a 2-year period which all dates are available for display, but you can always have dates way beyond that, but the schedules will only display up to a 2-year date. So now we'll focus on the setup area for the start dates, and I'm going to increase the view of this and scroll up. So you want to enter your project name, and there's 3 start dates, and each of these dates, as with most of these cells, anytime you see a red caret up on the top corner, a little red triangle, means you can hover over it and it'll supply some information. So the effort start date is normally when something comes onto your radar and says, hey, we got an effort going on, or something I'm thinking about. That would be your effort start date. The pre-start date is when you actually have some real activity going on that needs to be recorded, but it's before a time limited area, and so you can enter another date here, and I could simply show you this. So change the date to 14. It was 15, now it's 14. The timer start date is where if you have an effort and you have a limited amount of time to actually complete the effort. Now recall, this is all regarding the dates that you enter in for tasks in your schedule. This is not time limitations for producing this schedule. These are time limitations that you want to enter in your schedule for others to see. So the timer start date, let's say the pre-start date maybe some pre-activities for proposal. Once you receive the actual final requirements, then the start date starts. And then up to the right here, we're going to take a look at what are some of the, how do you produce the end date or the stop date due to either a duration or end date. So what we want to look at now is the end date. We previously entered the start dates. We're going to look at the end dates here. So I'm going to increase the view here so you can see this a little bit better. And recall that these three dates can actually be the same date, one and the same. It depends on your program, project, proposal, or family or social schedule. It's all up to you. But this timer start date is very important. So once that date is selected, and you can always change it, then you want to enter in the delivery date, which means after this timer start date, there is a limited time to produce the end result. So you can either enter in, it's one or the other for these two entries. You can either enter in a duration or a date. So here we have 45 days. We could change that to 30 days. Or we could enter an end date. Let's say it's 6/20/23. And you'll see it goes red. And there is information off to the right here within this area that says you got to only enter only one or the other. So if you want to get rid of the duration, you could have a fixed end date, or you could say, well, I want to have a 30-day, or let's make it 45. And again, this entry is here, so you got to delete that. Okay, so now we have the initial delivery date based on the user entry request of 45 days after the timer start. This auto date change area is based on some other information we're going to look at in the next section to the right. So the user entered in a 45-day duration, and that end date ended up on a Tuesday of July 4th, and as it turns out, that is a holiday. The dates, the selections to the right, which we'll get to in a moment, will allow you to change that off of a holiday or off of a weekend. Below it, there's an actual delivery date of 45 days, and then the number of days remaining from the current date. To the right of what we're looking at, and I'm going to move this screen over and we're going to scroll in a little bit closer, is the selection to say for my entire project, if the end date that I've previously selected falls on a weekend or a federal holiday, if I want it to move to the previous day. So if a date falls on a Saturday, this is most important for probably DoD government contracts. If this is a personal schedule, you probably don't need to worry about this. If it's a personal schedule, you probably want to select no. But if it is a federal contract or proposal or effort you're working on, you probably want to say yes. And so each of these you can select. So one selects to move it off of a Saturday and Sunday, and these two will work in conjunction. One is to move it off of a federal holiday, because the overall, again, this is for the overall project effort or proposal or whatever the government contract is, that you want to move the final end date. And this date selection will affect other dates, and we'll show that later. If this is a personal project or program, you can simply set that to no, and it will have no other consequence for you. This area on the lower left, and we'll enlarge that a little bit for you to see. We're going to scroll and enlarge that a little bit more. These are the date ranges to display on the calendar. So all activity within any of the three displays, Gantt, View, Schedule, either of the Gantts or the calendar, it will not display anything prior to the date selected here. There are two selections, one here and one here. The top selection is the start date of the display. The second one is the end date of display. There are preset values, and you'll see you can make selections here. Those selections are based on what was above to the upper left, date selected, or the end date. So if you want to only display the timer start date, you simply click on the button and timer start date, and this value here will change. The end date, you'll see up above due date with auto changes if needed, displays July 3rd, and then you can select either that value or something different. If you want to select something different, let's say you want to display, you may have tasks before or after this date. If you want to display your own date, select a blank, and then you can overtype with my date, and then it'll say enter here, and then over here you enter your new date. I want to start my calendar to be displayed. Now remember, all tasks can go before and after these dates. This is only for the display area. I want to start it on 6/15/23, and it'll display that. On the other hand, if you did have a previous item selected, you can select this task and then simply overtype it. My date. Another option is, if there is another task selected and you don't feel like doing either one of the two items, you can go to the top up here and overtype and say my new date. Any one of these options will get that date corrected. So now that you have your date selected, you can enter one of the pre-selections or enter a new my end date. And let's say you want to go out to, not next month, you want to go out a whole year, so 24. Or you could say I want to go to the end of that year, 12. Just change that date, 12/31/24, and then off you go. If there are date errors, it'll show up over here. Just keep in mind that the dates on the upper left, the timer start date must be on or after the pre-start date, which must be on or after the previous date. And if your date falls within a weekend or holiday, if you select yes or no on the top right, it'll display that as well. I'm going to enlarge this just a little bit more so you as the user can see what these dates are. Again, this is the selection area. Like as described before, you can select any one of these dates. Right now I have a personalized date selected, but if you want to change that to one of your predefined dates, it'll change that and everything will auto adjust. And then the due date, likewise the same thing. Or again, you could revert back to your own personalized date. We're now looking at the main schedule tab, which basically has where you're going to do your entries of all of your tasks. And this is a bird's eye view, and we're going to zoom in here. The main sections are, again, the header up at the top left here, which has your basic data from your setup area. There's an extra area for a user date, which is not used in calculations, but if you want to set a separate date of some sort, that just as a reminder. And then there's some user notes. That's the top section. The next section, which is the main area where you'll be entering in your tasks for your projects, proposals, home efforts, or personal calendar, whatever it may be, is in this section here. Some of these columns are listed as no edit, so please do not edit anything under that column. Same thing under whatever the no edit columns are, and you can see that in red. The next section off to the right is a live view of a Gantt chart. As you create the tasks on the left, they will appear on the right. Please do not edit this area, and there's screenshots, indicators that say please do not edit that. And then we'll go ahead and zoom in and address each of these areas. Since we've already explained the header area, which has the start dates and your completion date or duration, which is based on selections made for move off or don't move off of the weekend or federal holiday, these dates is for the overall project. Below here, which is in the red, and now we're going to take a much closer look here, is the entry area which we want to focus on. And I'm going to zoom in here, and this may go off your screen, but we're going to show this. So the screen is split, so it's not going to show. As I scroll up and down, you're going to see this top area is fixed, and then because the screen is fixed, you always want to be able to see your project name or effort, and then your tasks, and then you may have, you could have 5 to 100 tasks on your schedule. So that's why this allows you to scroll, and this is outlined in red here. The basic way this works is on the left here, simply numbers your tasks 1 through X, and keep in mind that each of these red little triangles indicates some user notes that you may want to see. So each one of these provides information on the information. Here is the main task area that you want to enter. This is the title of the task, and it could be anything from I'm starting my project to whatever you may happen to select. And there's 2 ways to enter here. One is you can simply type it in, my first task, or there's a drop-down menu which you could select from predetermined items. This one is set up for proposals and projects, and so for instance, the RFP issued, date received, and then you can go across OPR, the Office of Primary Responsibility, who's responsible for doing that task, not by personal name, but what group of individuals is responsible for that. So RFP, in this case, we're doing a proposal example, might be contracts. So you could scroll down and say contracts. And then the POC is the personal point of contact, and it's pre-populated with some generic names, but you can also overwrite that with Bob X. The next column over is your percent completion of that task. It goes from 0 to 100 plus an NA. So as you proceed through completing these tasks, if you want to track it using this, you can simply select an item, 10% and so forth. If you select 100%, it's going to gray out that row. So that indicates that that task has been completed. When you select 100%, it's also going to gray out in your one of the Gantt charts, the row to show gray as though it's completed. So if it's not completed, you want to scroll back and say, well, we're only at 90%. And then if you scroll to the right, there it'll still show the activity. Alerts, don't edit that. If there's a problem or error or alert, it'll show in this area here. This column of item type, you can select the heading, a task, milestone, and so forth. There is a bit of a misnomer for milestones. Milestones have no duration. However, for this tool, it has to have at least 1 day, and normally that's at the beginning or the end of the day. All of these dates start at like 12:01 a.m. and end at 11:59 p.m. So, for heading, you want to have, you'd like to change that to 1 day, but we're not going to select that right now. We're going to say this is a task. Moving to the right, the start date you want to enter. The start date should be between the start date selected up to the left, and you can enter in any date or year of choosing. If it's before the date selected, let's say 5:01, you're going to get an error indicator that it's previous or before the start date, and it's not allowed. Or if you want to continue, yes, okay, I want to continue. To the right of that, there is an initial duration. So these two columns, the initial duration and proposed end dates. If you want to have a duration of X number of days, you can enter it here. Or if you have a specific end date in mind, you can enter it in here. So let's say 5/22/23. Now you'll see an alert. You can't have both the duration and end date. So you simply select on one, delete that, and now you have the end date. To the right of that, there's an indicator of your initial end date. This is used in some calculations. And to the right of that, this is a separate selection for if you want to move the date of this particular task previous to a weekend or previous to a federal holiday. This is a little bit different from the item in the setup. I'm going to go back to the setup real quick here, and I'm going to scroll in here, and I'm going to show you over here. Here's the selection that you may have previously made, yes or no. If you want to move it off of a weekend, it'll shift it to the left, or a federal holiday. Either one of those selections is for the overall end date of your project, which only affects this date here. Let's go back to the main schedule. This yes/no is providing the same service to the dates, but only for this one row of tasking. Normally, if this is a federal program, project, or effort, you want to say yes because the customer normally doesn't do business on the weekends or federal holidays. And to the right, it'll automatically show the adjustment of that period. So for instance, we selected this first task to start on 5/21. We have an end date. Instead, we're going to change that to, let's say, 22 days. Can't have both duration and end date, so we'll delete the end date. And 5/22 is on a Monday. Had we selected 21, and we'll get rid of this extra information. Because yes is selected for move left to the weekend, it'll move it left to the first available date on left of the weekend bar. If it's not a federal holiday, otherwise it'll still move it left. And so the real dates that you should be paying attention to are these start dates and these end dates of durations. And it'll tell you what date to put that on. All right. So basically you go through line item by line item, you point and click or enter in your own information, enter in each item going across. And then if you want to insert a task, simply select the row on the left over here. Right now I'm selecting row 20. And I'm going to right click and say insert. And you can see the insert there. And it's going to take a few seconds. There's a few thousand rows, cells here that it's replicating. So just take a little patience, and when you see the circle stop, it'll complete its inserting. And you want to select your indentation level, which we haven't explained yet, and then enter in my third task. Or if you don't like that, you can select using the drop down menu and select anything you'd like. So subcase, some I don't know, whatever BOEs do, whatever you want to select. Now, if you want to indent this, let's say this item above it is, let's say, my second major set of tasks, and everything else is like, let's say you have 2 tasks under that. You could use the indent level and say, well, indent 2, and it pushes it out. You can see that's indented, and it shows the hierarchy of some of the efforts that you're doing. And then, of course, you want to go across and put your applicable dates based on under that area. And you can continue this until you have the appropriate number of tasks entered in and indentations, and who's responsible by maybe there's a test group, and Joe C. Carbo. You could enter the last name, whatever it happens to be, and then you keep going across. And when you insert a row like we did just a moment ago, some of these values show up blank. So there's an indicator here. You want to select yes, yes. If this is a private contractor digging a pool in your backyard, you may want to select no over here, because they may work through the weekends and holidays. It just all depends on what you want to set up here. All right, the next area over is the preview area, which you do not want to edit, but it just shows you a simple preview of a beginning notation of what you stated, and so forth. This goes out for a full 24 months, 2 years. And so all of this information is used for the other projects. There are some advanced measures you can take, such as you want to have a start date relative to another date, and we're going to cover this in some of the advanced areas. This date, let's say you want to have it start X number of days after the top date. So we're going to go through this further, but just to show you real quick, I can say equals that date plus its duration. The problem with this is it may end up putting it on a weekend or holiday. And then you want to simply change, if you don't want to change your start date, you could change the number of days, 3, if that'll set, there we go, puts it off to a Monday. If that was 2, it seems to be a Sunday. But if we want to say don't move it off of a weekend, and now it'll say Sunday. So that's what these options are good for, to say, hey, it's on a weekend or federal holiday, move it off, and then you can adjust the period. But again, the point is we use the relative value for pushing that off. And you don't have to have every single entry. The important ones are the task name and the dates. The start date of your individual task, and then select one or the other, the duration or end date. And just as an example, you can't have both. In the initial end date proposed, 5/23/23, and it'll alert you, you can't have both. You got to have either the duration or end date. We'll delete one. And then the true end dates and durations used are over here on the right. And just remember, you still have all of these pop up. You just hover your mouse over for any of the information that might be added. So each time, if you want to insert a row, you simply select the left number, select insert. If you want to delete a row, simply select that same row. I'll say I'll delete this one. Click on that row number. The number to the right is the task number. That's not what you want to select. You want to select the row number, And I'm going to right click and say delete. And it simply removes it from everything. And all this information is going to be reflected in your classic calendar or the Gantt quick overview. It will also be displayed in your Gantt view tool, but that requires one additional step, and we'll get to that soon. In the list of tasks that you've entered, each of these tasks, which will be shown in the Gantt chart or the calendar schedule, most of these tables, and this is known as a table, must have a minimum of 2 or sometimes 3 rows. So you don't want to be deleting every single one of these because you have to start somewhere and provide that information. The other thing is the order that things are shown in the Gantt chart schedule or the calendar schedule is the same vertical order top to bottom here that you've selected. So if you select this item to be up top, it's going to be followed by the one underneath and the one underneath that. That's a little bit different than the indentation level. That indentation level simply shows hierarchy. So you can also have repeating dates. If you have a meeting every Tuesday, you can simply enter a row in and set it for every Tuesday with successive dates. And in the calendar, same thing. If you have a group of items in your calendar and you want some things to be shown at the top, you simply have to put them at the top here, and we'll go through that a little bit later on. But this is the basic overview. Again, your dashboard at the top, and then this is your task entry area. You enter your tasks, and then as a quick preview, you could look to the right, but this is a no edit area, and it reminds you. So right now, for instance, this is showing this yellow bar here. Yellow bar indicates the today date. And so we've only entered in a couple tasks here. One here. We can simply change these dates. Let's see, this is starting at the 23rd. Let's say we want to change this to the 24th or later on. So we can simply, now we previously entered in the equation, but we can just simply overwrite that and say let's say 25, 23, and maybe it has a duration of 10 days. And then we can scroll across and see the results. And here's the result that we see. Now, the name of the task is cut off in this view, but that will all be corrected in the other Gantt views, which we'll get to after this particular area. And now we're going to go on to the next section. This is the overview of the reports. As mentioned earlier, there's 3 reports, and you can see there's 3 tabs across the bottom, and we'll hit each one real quickly. There's the schedule Gantt view, and then there's the schedule classic view of calendar, and then there's the Gantt view, which is the quick view, which is based on Excel charts. So we'll take a look at the first report 1, schedule Gantt view. We'll switch there. You'll immediately be presented with an option to update. Right now we're going to say no. If anything is changed in the main schedule or setup, when you go to the report 1, it's going to ask you if you want to update this. Otherwise you say no. Otherwise you say no. And then here's the overview. There's the sort of a replication of the dashboard, and in this Gantt chart, nothing should be editable. It's all just for viewing. So you can copy and paste without fear of ruining any of the formulas. There's the initial task area that you've selected. We have not updated this yet, and you're going to see that in just a moment. And off to the right is the Gantt chart bar display. Again, each bar shows in color the duration in days with the heading over top, and the yellow area under it is the the today date. And so we can enlarge this a little bit. So this is nearly a replication of the main schedule, but this is an uneditable, and it kind of changes up a few things. It shortens out the dashboard up top, shortens out some of the display information for your tasks, and then you could see the actual tasks off to the right. Moving on to the Report To tab. This is the actual calendar view. And so up to the left, the very top left, you have the name of the tab as indicated before, and there's some information where you can highlight, and a shortened dashboard, if you will. This is the main crux of the information over here. Right now, this particular task is started in May, and if you scroll up and down, you can see the various months, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. So each of the tasks that were entered in date by date, it'll show up here in each of these areas. And this information in this tab, there's no need to update it. It will update live. Anytime you enter tasks into the main schedule and provide the correct dates, it'll show up here in the date ranges. And this goes on for a 2-year period. So there's 24 months here. When you enter this tab, it will auto fit every row to make sure everything is visible. If for some reason you don't think there's something visible, you can hit the auto fit button and it'll refresh, but everything should be refreshed as you go through and change it. This is the schedule classical calendar view. Now we'll move on to the report number 3, the schedule Gantt quick view, which uses the classical Microsoft Excel Gantt view. There's some basic information up at the top left here, but here's the Gantt view that's highlighted here. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. We're going to get into this in more detail. Basically, it has your list of tasks off to the left here, dates across the top. This is classical Gantt view, and then your bars with duration showing across. And this is in the waterfall fashion, which is you want to do a waterfall, meaning it kind of cascades from one to the other. You don't have to have it in this order. There's some other options here, but we're going to show that in a little while. We're now going to look at some details in the Report 1 Schedule Gantt view. As I click on this tab in the lower left, as you can see, we're presented with an option to either update this view now or do not update this view. What I've done is taken the liberty of updating the main schedule. I'm going to click no for now and go back and show you the main schedule. I've added a bunch of potential items, as you may see on the left here. I'm going to increase that. These are different tasks that I've added. I've added some dates. And now we want to go to the Schedule 1 Gantt view. If it doesn't update automatically, it shows what your previous update was. If you want to update it automatically, simply select yes, and it may take a few minutes, and you'll be presented with a screen, and you'll see the screen here. It says it's updating, may take a few minutes. You may see a not responding message, and please be patient. But what's going to happen is all of these rows, there's thousands of items that have to be updated, and it'll update and then produce this particular Gantt view. After a few minutes of the Gantt view updating, the screen will open up and display all of the tasks that you've entered in the main schedule. And you can see this may take a few minutes. It's also saying please wait, please be patient. Again, that's because there's a lot of calculations going on. And this view will be presented where it should not be edited. It looks very near the same as the main schedule, but it will show all of the updated items in this particular Gantt view. You can use your mouse to point and click and copy certain portions, or provide updates to other people Or if you want to go back and change your any information in the setup, when to start to the display or task item or dates, that too can be updated. And now we just saw the update occur. So now this view, we are in Schedule Report 1, nearly replicates all of the data in your, I'm going to switch back to the main schedule. There's a lot of other information in the main schedule that doesn't show here, but you don't need that. The basic gist is you have your dashboard at the top and any notes that you've added. And here's your task table with all of the dates. And then the actual Gantt with the information across here. And so as you can pick and choose to change things back in your main schedule. If you feel this is out of date, you can select the button up here to force a re-update. But because I haven't changed anything, I can switch back and forth between one tab back to the Report 1, and it will not ask me to update because that has not detected any changes. So if you want to put this into another application, you could copy and select whatever information you want. I'm going to make sure I'm scrolled to the left. Then I'm going to increase this view a little bit so it's a little bit more obvious. So all of the information for tasks that you entered into the main schedule is still available, and then you can copy and paste whatever you want. Some of these pop-up messages still exist, and you can see that. None of this information is editable, so if you double click, you'll get a message, where it happens to be none of this, even though this is green, in most areas that are green are editable. In this particular view, they are not. And again, you'll see the today line in yellow with the red outline. And each of these bars indicate the duration. You'll notice the kickoff meeting, the blue bar is only for 1 day, but the text goes beyond that. Take note of the length of the bar. That is the duration of the activity. We're now looking at the classical calendar view. If you simply select the Report to Schedule Classical Calendar tab at the bottom, the title will also be noted at the top left. I'm going to scroll in so you can see at the top left here. There's also the project name. This is some of the dashboard information that's been supplied. It's going to show you your effort start date. These are the start dates that were selected in the Setup tab and the end date. So the start date that was selected for these are not the display dates. These are the pre-start dates. The display dates start based on the setup. So it looks like in May, we're May 2023. Start date is on 21. We're going to switch to the Setup tab just temporarily. And it says May 21 for the start date. And we'll go back. And sure enough, May 21 is the start date. All of the tasks that were entered in fall on the date as indicated. And if the duration is 7-8 days, whatever it happens to be, it'll repeat the task name over that period of time. Each task starts with a bullet, a round bullet, and it continues on to the next month. If there are two tasks that fall on the same date, they could be overlapping. You see the first one starts out with a bullet and second one, so you can just simply tell the difference. And this is an enlarged view. And this goes on and on for each month and year that's indicated. I'm going to scroll, reduce the size of this just for a moment, just so you can see how the dates fall across. And if there's repeating items over duration, let's say it's 5 days, it'll show up every 5 days. And then if there's a new one that overlaps that, it'll show up here like start solution and BOE estimates, and those items will continue for the duration that was selected. And you'll notice some of the end dates that were moved off of the weekends. the BOE estimates, perhaps they were moved off to the weekend. Selection was yes, move off of weekend, so it won't show on the weekend. Other items, you can always start on a weekend, but you can never end on a weekend if you select yes, move off of a weekend. So start solution, and so forth. Once you look at this, you can always go back and change the date to start on a Friday. Start date is not so much as important as the end date, especially working with federal contracts, because you cannot deliver something on a federal holiday or a weekend. And that kind of summarizes the calendar view. There's no other options here. You'll see the auto fit row height button at the top. When you enter into this tab, it will automatically execute this method, which will make sure that everything fits within the calendar. But if you're unsure, you could always hit it again and make sure you refresh it. We're now looking at the Report 3 Schedule Gantt Quick View, and I will enlarge this for you to show what you're looking at. Maybe you can see it a little bit better. We'll have to scroll over a little bit and up a little bit. Okay, so there's several sections here. There's the instructions, which you can hover over, and of course the tab name. There's date interval selection and the visible date range that you can select. There's a few buttons across the top here, and then here is the main Gantt view. And as you can see, the tasks that you entered into the main schedule tab are listed here, top to bottom, just as listed in that other tab view. And then the colored bars going across, this is a typical Gantt view, will show the duration with the names overlaid on top of the bars, with the dates across the top, and your project name is at the top here. There are several ways to, if you don't like this view, you can clean it up a little bit. If you want to get rid of these the titles over these bars, there's a button here that says remove labels from bars. You simply click that and it removes all of the labels from those bars. If you want to put it back in, the button title is changed, add labels. You click it again and put them back in. So you can off and on whatever you'd like. The other option that is typically used for Gantt chart is to shrink the dates. Right now, every date of the calendar is shown across the screen, and those dates are selected based on what the user selected over here for the visible display range, which is 521 to 702. So you'll see 521 up here on the left, and it goes over to the right to 7.2. If you don't care for that view, or if you think the dates are too jumbled up, you can always select the chart itself and scroll up further across, and it'll help separate some of those dates. There's a couple of things that we can do here. One is, right now the date interval is 1. That means it's showing every single date. If you want to show every other date, every 2 days, select 2, 3. Let's say you want to select every 7 days. Simply select this here, and then on the button at the top, select user, set user select date interval. Click that, and you'll see now it's been updated to show every 7 days based on what you've selected. I'm going to scroll back in a little bit, and then of course you can always still remove those titles off and on if you'd like. The chart itself is fully updatable. This is an open architecture. You can select anything in here if you want to change something. Change the format plot area. You may see this off to the right if it's not off your screen. You can change. You can select the series, and if you want to change what the colors are, you can change any of the colors. There's a lot of options here. If you want to give it an outline of black, you can do that as well. And then you can still use the remove labels, and you can still change the date range. Let's say we want to go every 5 days, and select that, click the button, and it updates to every 5 days. Maybe you want to add back in the labels. So there's a lot of options here. I don't recommend changing too many of the editable areas within the chart itself, although everything is open. Should you accidentally mess up something, the dates or something you don't like, or gosh, I want to reset this whole thing, you can always hit the Reset User Gantt chart, click that, and it goes back to its original view. Also, when you copy and paste this, you may want to select the whole outlined area, copy, and then maybe you want to paste it into a presentation or a Word document. But if you accidentally delete the whole thing, and I'll simulate this, and then you go somewhere, you come back and it's, oh my goodness, it's missing. So you can reset it and simply, well, there is a technical glitch here, but what you want to do is, let's re-simulate that. So if you accidentally delete the chart, you hit reset the chart and it'll repopulate it. Okay, so these tasks are shown vertical top to bottom as shown or selected or identified in the main schedule area. And then there's other ways you can change this date range. If you want to change a different range of these dates which are to be displayed, which is also indicated up here, you simply go back to the Setup tab, and these are the dates of the range that you're displaying. Right now we're showing 5/21 to 7/02. If I wanted to change and make this my other end date, and then simply double click on this, and again, if you can't edit here, you can always go to the top and edit up here, but we're going to change this here to, see, we started at 5/21, and let's change this to let's say 6:15. We'll hit return. There's no errors. Go back to the Gantt view, and now 5/21 over to the right, 6:15, and again on the upper left it shows the various areas that you can edit. And once again, you can always change the date interval. I want to go back to a single day because it's important that everyone sees the single day. Reset it, and now it shows every single day. And if you want to remove the labels, back on and back off. There are some interesting aspects for items that are listed on the left here. They don't show here because they may be off the date range. There's a weirdness with a main schedule. If you do not enter any dates in, such as the start of contract, and there's no duration, and you forget to add dates, here's what happens. You'll see this overlay of jumbled text information. The only way to correct that is one of two ways. Either remove the labels, see, I'm clicking on the button up at the top, or add labels back in, you'll see it goes back in. Or the other way is to get your dates back in. So 6/27, 23, add in a duration, let's say 2, and we'll go back to the Gantt, and you'll see it's corrected. And then again, you can always rechange your date range at any time, your display range, or remove the labels. So this is basically the overview of the Report 3 Schedule Gantt Quick View. We're now looking at the Example tab, which is at the lower right of your screen. I'm going to scroll left here, and if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see all of the tabs. To the most right, there is the example, and that's what we've selected. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so you can see what it is. Basically, there's a listing of what can be done using the tool, some example purposes of the tool, and then there's following below that multiple examples. Doesn't show all the possibilities, but you can use your imagination. There's the basic Gantt view, some calendar views, and it shows different purposes. And so as the user, you can peruse through that and see what you'd like to do, and perhaps even replicate one of them or create your own variants as you go through. There's multiple options that are available to you. Here are a few tips for going through some of these reports and the way you can make some entries. I'm going to show how to use relative dates in the task entries, which are displayed here, and we're going to change some of these headers, and we'll talk about some waterfall techniques and entries as they appear in the calendar, and eventually some repeating dates. So right now we have simple generic headers here with some dates. I'm in the main schedule here, which is shown at the lower left, and if you look to the lower right, we're going to switch between the main schedule tab and the report 3 schedule Gantt quick view. So let me show you the Gantt quick view real quick. And as you can see, there's 3 tasks, has the dates across the top, and this is actually in a waterfall type display where you have the earliest task starting at the top, and as task starts they get later and later and later, and so it kind of rolls to the right and down, kind of like a cascading effect. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, but I want to get to the relative dates. I'm going to go back to the main schedule tab. Let's say this first date is a most critical start date, and you've already entered in a fixed date for some of the other tasks. You could actually make this start date relative to the start date or relative to the end date. So for instance, right now there is text entered in, and if you look up here at the top in the entry box, it has the text, and you could click here and you can edit any of this information you'd like, or you can click here and enter it as you may see the cursor moving back and forth. But let's say you want to make this relative to the top date. So you click on the cell, you type the equal sign, and then click on that top date, and you may want to say, I want to start this task 5 days after that date. So you click on that, plus 5, which represents 5 days, and then you want to make sure your duration is correct, and if you have yes or no selected, and it shows. And now what happens is, if you look over here on the right side, which is the preview, it'll show that it's pushed it off by 5 days. So if I want to have that start date plus let's say 10 days, I'll select 10. You'll notice over here on the right it pushed it off to 10 days. Now this is a no edit preview area, but I can also show that on the Gantt chart. I'm going to show you something a little bit special here. I recommend you do not do this, but I'm going to show you this just for our presentation purposes. So I'm going to select a new window, and that's going to be off to the right. Now I've got 2 windows open that are displaying the same Excel spreadsheet, and on the right I'm going to click over, navigate over to report 3, and here you see the Gantt, the quick view Gantt. So now you take notice of the location of these bars. I'm going to select rather than 10 days, I'll make that 7 days, and take a look on the right side. You'll see it changes when I hit the return, and it has a duration of 2 days. Maybe I want to change that to 5, and it'll push that out to 5 days. So everything functions in real time for this particular Gantt chart, as does in the classical calendar. Report 1 is a little bit different. It's more complicated, and so when you go there, you hit the button, and it'll resolve it within a few minutes to show. But everything updates in real time for this chart. So again, we've already set the first item to be the start date plus 7 days. You could change that. Simply highlight the cell, select the equal button, scroll over to its end date. Let's say you want to have the end date, and then you want to add, I'm going to go to the top here, that end date plus 3 days. Okay, so everything adjusts. It shows the end date, and on your master schedule here, as long as it doesn't fall on a weekend or a federal holiday because you've selected yes, all the dates will adjust, and you can do that continuously. I'll say this one equals the previous end date plus 2 days, and it has a duration of 4 days. So what's going to happen here is you could change the start date and everything will ripple through. So I'm going to change this to 28, and you notice on the right everything shifts to the right. Now if something should happen to fall on a weekend, I'll do this by one more day and we'll see what happens. Now because you've selected, and again everything did shift to the right, but for those items that would have fallen on a weekend, such as you have a 4-day duration after the 16th, it would have fallen on the 19th, but because you selected yes on move off a holiday and weekends, it moves it to the previous workday. So it really gives you a true duration of 1 day, even though you desired 4. Another way to change this is either change this to 5, assuming it's not on a holiday, and it will shift over on the right. Or if you wanted to keep it as 4 and you select no, don't move it off of a weekend, it'll show, or if it happens to be a holiday, and then you get the full duration. So that's a quick view of how you can use the relative dates. When you make everything relative, you can have start to start relationships, including with the end, and just add your own durations as desired. And we talked about the waterfall technique, which is, if possible, enter your earliest starting dates starting at the top of the list and then work your way down. So again, as you can see on the right area here, it kind of cascades down. So we're going to be looking at the appearance of the calendar items. I'm going to switch over to the calendar. Now there's multiple pieces of information here. It's the same information as was in the prior Gantt view, whatever you entered into the main schedule. But let's say you want to have a repeating item. If you have a meeting every Monday, or whatever your selection is. So what you would do is, because the order of entries in the selections in the main schedule will appear in the order top to bottom in any given day, what you want to do is have your first set of activities listed at the top for your repeating days. So I'm going to insert another row here. Select insert. Now again, it's updating about 1,000 cells or something like that. Okay, so we're about to finish updating. It's adding all the information so you can add to this, and then we're going to select to add our first entry and put in our repeating days. So as soon as this completes, we'll show that. And now our row has finished resolving. You can select your indentation level. I believe we went over that earlier, but let's say you're going to have a team meeting, and then you're going to have another team meeting, and you can edit this as needed. And let's say your team meeting, we already had some relative dates put in here, so we're going to change those in just a minute. So let's say the first team meeting is on 5/29. Let's see, that could be I'm going to change that to a duration of 1, because it's a 1-day meeting. Somehow it falls on a weekend. So let's make that 6:05. Okay, that falls on a Monday, and the following Monday, let's see, 6:12, and too few days. Oh, that's not enough. And we got to select our yes/no dates to make sure everything appears correctly, and put in our duration. And that's on a Wednesday, so we want to back it off 2 days. So if that's 12. Okay, so now we have two items at the top. The 6, 8. We'll change that to be a fixed value of, let's see, 6/19. I believe that actually is a holiday. No, that's change that duration to 1, and that is a holiday. So you're not going to be able to use that date unless you say, no, forget about federal holidays, and then it'll say it's on a Monday. So the point is, now we've created 3 items for team meeting, and we'll change this name again to team meeting. And we'll take a look at the calendar. You'll see in June, team meeting, team meeting, team meeting, and then the final information of overtype or insert here. Let's say there's another activity that actually starts review the design. Let's say this could be a proposal. And of course, you have all these other entries that you can make. And let's say also that the date of that design starts on 6/12, and that's going to go on for 10 days perhaps. So what we have now, we've set up a schedule. We've overridden the federal holiday on the 19th. We may still want to meet, but the important thing is on the right side, the team meeting, because you've listed them on the left all at the top. When you finally get to the day of the review design, and let's see if we can enlarge this a little bit. We're in June. The team meeting on the 12th will occur above the title of review design. So if you want to have each team meeting or whatever happens to be at the top of the listing in your calendar, that's the way you want to do it. You want to put them at the top of the list here, and then put all your dates in. You could say, since this falls on a Monday, we change this to a fixed date. Well, what you could have said was equals that date plus 7, and then it will automatically change to the same day, but it's all relative. And again, this one equals the one above it plus 7. And so now you'll see the same dates on here, but when you change the top date to start on, let's say 6/12, all the dates below will start shifting. And again, because the 19th falls on a holiday, you can override that and say, no, don't move off a federal holiday. Sometimes it's important because people don't usually work on a federal holiday, but you might. But in the calendar, it reflects that beginning date. You use the relative dates. So your team meeting starts on the 12th, on the 19th, and the 26th. Okay, so you can have repeating entries which I just displayed. You want to repeat an entry. You could do it that way. There's multiple ways to do this, but those are a few tips of ways to change this calendar. If you select to have everything move off a holiday, then you're just going to have to decide, I don't want this, and then just simply set your, I'm going to scroll to the left here, set your % complete to perhaps for that one line item. If you say 100% done, it'll gray out that row, and then on your Gantt view, which I'll actually enlarge this and scroll to the right, you'll see just those line item for that one particular item is grayed out. Since you selected 100%, it's done. If you don't want to have that at all, you can select NA, and then the entire row in the Gantt will be grayed out. This does not have an effect in the quick view. The quick view won't display those grayed out areas. we've changed our dates here, so it's going to look a little bit different. And then as usual, you can remove your dates or put them back in. In this video, we're going to be showing how to use some advanced features of changing in what's viewable in the main schedule. And you'll see the OPR, tasks, and POC. Each of these have their individual selections. And you may be wondering, where do these come from? How can I change them? I want to adjust them. These are preset items, and on many of these you can overwrite them. If you type in tooling department, you can simply type in my department. And so how do we change the rudimentary selections that are shown here? And that's what we're going to show here now. So we're looking at the main schedule area. We're going to switch to the setup tab. And to adjust those main area views, we're going to be looking at specifically how to change the task, update, or delete. We're going to go to the setup tab, and basically you want to go to the review selection at the top of the screen up on the upper left. Hit review, and then you'll see protect workbook. It's currently grayed out. I'm going to click on that, and that will unlock the protection of the workbook. Then we're going to go down to the lower left area back to setup and right click on unhide, and we're going to unhide data val. Data val is used for the task selections. Data val 2 would be used for the other selections. We're only going to go through the data val, and if you want to do some other changes to the point of contacts and so forth, you can do that as well. Now that we've selected that, the data val tab shows up here at the bottom. Click the data val, and now the only area that you should be editing is columns F through O, which are under task and milestones. So anytime you want to insert or delete, you must select only the cells in that complete section and then select insert or delete. If you don't do that, you're going to run across some severe errors. And in this case, you still need to unprotect the worksheet, back looking up at the top, unprotect sheet. And now you're in full edit mode. Do not select the row at the left over here where my cursor is. Do not select the entire row to insert. You can only select, or should only select, a row or rows within this task and milestone section. Now that you're in this mode, you can select only the rows or cells under the task and milestones, such as I'm highlighting here. And I can increase the view here. So I'm going to only select this one row. Now that you're in full edit mode, you can change this to received XYZ. And now that RFP issued and received, I added XYZ. If you go to the main schedule, you can see under tasks, it may show right here, XYZ. I added that back in, but I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go back to the data val tab, which you're currently editing, and I'm going to undo these changes. If you want to insert a row, you simply select only those cells where you want to insert, right click, and you can select insert and then shift down. Do not make any other selections. Otherwise, the entire spreadsheet on this tab will be affected, and it may cause errors later on. And now you can add in my new task, and that will show up in the previous list shown. And just to confirm any changes that you think you may want to add, again, we'll select only the rows under the task and milestones. We're going to right click, insert, shift cells down, and this will be my new task. Okay, and now we'll go back to main schedule to see if that fits in, and any of these you can select and you'll see My New Task shows up here, or the other My New Task. Either one of these you can select because you've changed it in the data val section. So if you don't want this one, you can select it. If you want to delete it, highlight only those cells under columns F through O, right click and delete, and then shift cells up, and that deletes that. Same with this row. I'm going to delete that, select delete, shift cells up. And in the other case, we wanted to insert and we said shift cells down. If you want to insert a group, a large group number, you could select all the cells under that area and as many rows as you highlight down, and then you can right click on insert, again shift down, and now you can enter in any one of these areas. You've entered a whole bunch of areas. So I'm going to undo that right now. As we go, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and this is the very bottom of the list. Everything must be inserted above this gray row. There's a few spare rows here, but that's basically how you insert rows and information or edit data for your task selections. And then towards the end, when you're done, you want to reverse the process of selecting protect the sheet, and do not enter a password. Select OK. Select the data val tab, hide, may take a moment, and if there is a pop-up message, just simply select no. Protect worksheet is not grayed out, click on that. Do not enter a password and select OK. Similarly, if you want to edit the OPR, Office of Primary Responsibility, or POC, the information on how to do that is over in the Instructions tab. I'm going to scroll down here, and maybe we'll enlarge this a little bit. We'll get rid of that. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to scroll down, and towards the bottom end here, advanced user steps to edit, add, delete section tab. So there's tasks, and here's the instructions to add or edit the OPR and POC. So, and there's also an additional section on how to edit federal holidays. I would use extreme caution on editing any of these items, because if you insert columns, rows, or change formulas, the tool will not operate correctly. So we'll go back up to the top of our instruction set and back over to the main schedule. And so basically you now know some of the advanced features on how to do some changes and what you can and cannot do. So in summary, we've looked at all of the tabs across the board. As you look at the lower bottom area, instructions, use your notes all the way over to the examples. You've seen how to enter information, how to do your setup on these various areas. Each of these areas needs some simple setup. In some cases, you can only do this one, or may only want to do this once, or you can make your own template and replicate it for others to use. Simply change the name. Of course, always for good configuration management, save on the file, and then save the name as and up the rev number. We've also gone over all the task entries, including the dashboard up at the top area. The dashboard area includes, or the task area for the task table, editing your information, selecting Office of Primary Responsibility, people's names. We've gone all over the start dates, duration, your preview off to the right, which is a preview of the Gantt. These cells are live equations, do not edit those. And then the three areas, three reports, the basic Gantt view, which has a lot of details, and the calendar schedule, which you can enter in multiple items and show across multiple months. And finally, the quick view, which is your classical view. And then as an extra, you can see the examples, which in this case, the view is not shown. But in your tool, the template that you receive. So it's recommended when you first receive this tool, save it, do a save as, up the rev number, the R number at the end, rename the prefix over the word template with your own specific project name, and then save, and enjoy, and hope you have great use of this tool throughout the process.